Last week, the Congressional Budget Office put out a report that said that the GDP is expected to grow 3.7% in 2021. It also said the unemployment was going to decrease by 5.3% in 2021. This without taking into consideration any stimulus package. There are so many indications that question how this could be accurate. Just last week, we reported the highest trade deficit in 12 years. Every week, hundreds of thousands of people file first-time unemployment claims, and continuing claims top millions upon millions. The January jobs report found that only 49,000 jobs were created. Meanwhile, the December jobs report found that 140,000 jobs disappeared. This is hitting industries like the hospitality and retail industries especially hard. Not to mention, some of the nation's largest employers are struggling to stay afloat. American Airlines just last week warned it may have to furlough 13,000 employees. Only to make a bad situation worse, there are some new COVID strains that are more infectious than previous strains. Vaccinating enough people to reach herd immunity is a race against the clock, and a failure to meet that pushes an economic recovery helpful to the average American further down the line. To help shed some light on this situation, we asked a financial expert exactly what all of this means. And Jay Clopton, he is the founder of Clopton Capital. He's joining us now from Chicago. Jake, how are you doing today?
Doing great, Andy. Thank you.
So the CBO came out with a report last week that said GDP is expected to grow 3.7% in 2021, with an average growth of about 2.6% over the next 5 years. That CBO report said also kind of specifically said that it was not taking into account the stimulus in one way or the other. So you're working with several different sectors, the hospitality sector, for example. Are you seeing with the people that you're working with any indication that that's realistic, that GDP growth is going to be there?
Right. So the CBO report took into account, specifically upside, in comparison to the July report that came out, specifically because the downturn that was expected in 2020 wasn't actually as deep as they thought it was going to be, and that the subsequent recovery actually started sooner than they thought it was going to be. Right. So a lot of that is played into like the upside report that came out recently. A lot of that, less pronounced downside and faster moving upside was because of all of the stimulus and accommodation that was put into effect by both the Fed, Treasury, and then also the stimulus packages from the government.
So the 3.7% figure that the CBO gave kind of takes into account, does not take into account some of these problems, like what we're seeing in the airline industry, for example. American Airlines just last week said that they're probably going to furlough 13,000 employees. This isn't just not, keeping things going, scraping by at the bare minimum, let alone moving forward and moving up and increasing the gross domestic product. So in the sectors that you represent, are you seeing anything that would kind of counterbalance that?
So the CBO report, did speak to GDP growth and the labor market kind of separately, right? So even though they might see higher GDP growth, into the near future, it specifically stated that the labor markets are going to take a lot longer to recover than really I think they were expecting before.
Jake Clopton of Clopton Capital joining us from Chicago. Jake, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
And that's your business brief for today. I'm Andy Hirschfeld in New York.